Hello VC, Michael, Clash City Rocker, with another video, music video based on my time as a stagehand, sound man, which I did for about 25 years. My last story was about Stevie Ray Vaughan's last show, and this guitar pick, which I ended up getting from the deck from his last show. But this one is a little bit different. This is about the Rolling Stones playing at Alpine Valley in 1989. In 1989, I was working at a couple theaters, a big shed outdoor venue called Alpine Valley, and then a local theater that held about 2,500 people. And that year, 1989, was a great year to be a stagehand because there were a ton of shows that were touring. But the one I'm going to talk about this time is this one, Rolling Stones. And this says 9-9 and 9-8. And I know it's not the easiest way to see it. And 9-11. So 9-8, 9-9, and 9-11. Rolling Stone shows. Now, again, talked about this last time. I didn't always get soft passes. I had house passes. But when I would get a soft pass, I would try to save them. And 1989 was a great year because the Stones played at Alpine Valley for 3 shows. The Who played at Alpine Valley for 3 shows, which was another one of my favorite bands. The Dead played there for 3 days, etc. So this is a story about the Rolling Stones show at Alpine Valley and how I got to experience that. But before I do, my goal with these videos is to connect with people from the VC, to talk to them about music, to talk to them about records that I have in my collection. Thank you to those of you who have liked my videos, to have subscribed, and especially for those who have made comments. So this video is about 1989 and the Rolling Stones, which was kind of a weird year for the Rolling Stones on many different levels. So my first Stones album was this one, Some Girls. This came out in 1978. This is the infamous Lucille Ball version. And this was my favorite, and probably still is my favorite Rolling Stones album. And I played this to death, and I remember watching them on Saturday Night Live. I became a huge Stones fanatic. And I had a family friend who gave me this album, which I still think is one of the greatest compilations ever. Big Hits, High Tides and Green Grass, the Rolling Stones. And what's cool about this is that it has these great fold-out pictures of each of the individual members of the band. And by the way, this is one that I see all the time in record stores in the dollar bin. But the tracks on here are Satisfaction, Last Time, As Tears Go By, Time Is On My Side, It's All Over Now, and Tell Me. And again, this was such a great introduction to the Rolling Stones' early catalog. And again, I was hooked on it. And whenever I could, and I would get Cream Magazine all the time, here are the Glimmer Twins, I would take pictures of Keith Richards from these magazines, and I would plaster them in my locker. I suppose people are probably worried about me, but anyways, I was a massive Stones fan. And 1989 was when they were coming to Alpine Valley. So they had gone through a little bit of turbulent time, and I forgot to grab this, but 1983, this album came out, Undercover, which was a radical departure from the Some Girls Emotional Rescue Tattoo You album. There's different rhythms, different sounds. Mick was trying to modernize the band, and I think that caused a lot of strife within the band. And then they signed a new contract to a new record label, and then Mick went out and started a solo career. So here's his first solo album, She's the Boss, which is, a fairly decent record, I have to say. But I guess that caused some animus in the band. And their next one, which was Dirty Work, was fraught with all kinds of difficulties. And the one that I think is hilarious is One Hit to the Body, which is the video where Keith Richards is stalking Mick Jagger and looking like he wants to hit him with his guitar. So then this came out, and then what happens is Jagger releases another solo album, Primitive Cool. And this one's not as good as She's the Boss. And this has to be also one of the worst covers ever in the history of music. And so the Stones kind of were on a hiatus for a while. So Keith ends up forming a band, the Expensive Winos, and he puts out this album, which is a great album, Talk is Cheap. And it had singles on it, and I love this single. I found this 12-inch a few years ago. I bought it just because of the picture. It's so cool with his skull ring. Take It So Hard, Keith Richards. And so it didn't seem like the Stones were ever going to get back together, that Mick was going to continue his solo career and Keith was going to end up on his. And then lo and behold, they got back together in 1989 and they released this album, Steel Wheels, promo copy somehow or another I ended up with. And I think this is a great record. Now, I know a lot of people don't think that this is so good, and this introduces the late era Stones, but I think it's fantastic. And there are a number of documents of the live shows that happened during that tour. There is Flashlight, which I don't have at the moment. I had it on CD. And then there's like a 4-record set. There's also this that came out on Record Store Day a few years ago, which is 1989 Live, the Steel Wheels album. And it has Rock in a Hard Place in Atlantic City, and then Almost Hear You Sigh from Tokyo. So, again, I'm a huge Stones fan, and I'm able to finally work a Rolling Stones show. And I did a week of pre-production, and then again, those 3 shows. And then the way it worked was they played one day, then we had another day of teching because we had to create vanity ramps for Mick Jagger. So the story behind them playing at Alpine Valley was they usually played stadiums, and they ended up playing at the Shed, and I think it was the only one they played in a Shed. And the story that I've been told is that the promoter managed to get the Stones to come to Alpine Valley instead of playing a stadium in Chicago or in Milwaukee, where they hadn't played since '75, was because he gave them a massive guarantee, like $1 million or something like that. And that's how they ended up at the Shed. So in order to make this profitable, they packed in like 42,000 people every night, which is way more than should have been there in the first place. Now, to personalize this, what's funny about this story, at least for me, is I had finally gone back to school. And if you saw those passes, it said the shows were the 8th, the 10th, and the 11th in September. Well, that was the first week of classes. So I called my professors and said, hey, I'm doing these Stones shows. I'm with them for a couple of weeks. I'm not going to be there at class. Are you cool with that? And even though they didn't know me and I had a really terrible academic record, they said, go ahead. And so I worked all these Stone shows, which was kind of cool to have that kind of access. So I mentioned this in the last video. When you're a stagehand, the goal is to get a show call. A show call, you make more money. If you like the band, you actually get to see them. And in my case, I ended up running a spotlight. Now, I didn't like running a spotlight. And the big reason for it is because I would have to pay attention. And that's not really something I'm very good at. But during these shows, I ended up being on a spotlight that should have been 40 feet in the air. But because they were doing it in a shed, I was on a scaffolding platform about 10 feet off the deck, right above the monitor engineer. And if I wanted to, I could have reached over and patted Bill Wyman on the head because, again, I was only 10 feet off the ground. So here's a picture. I know it's kind of hard to see, of me running a spotlight during this Rolling Stones show. And what's interesting, and those of you who are in this business can kind of tell, I'm not wearing my headphones. Notice my ear there? I've slipped my headphones off so I can watch the band. And in order to know what cues I'm supposed to do, so those who run spotlights, again, the lighting director is calling, frame 1, frame 2, frame 3 or whatever the case may be. I believe that during the shows, I'm on Mick Jagger. Now, lucky for me, there's a guy on stage right, I'm stage left, that's exactly like me. And so if he flashes a green gel, I flip to green. If he does pink, I flip pink. I remember my colors. Now, some of you may be wondering, like, how did this picture of me, how did I get this? Well, I did the pre-production ahead of time, and I got to know some of the Way team. And what happened was the guy I was working with in that little spot tower said, hey, why don't you go get an instant camera? Now, remember, this is way back in 1989, and I'll take some pictures for you. Now, this is incredibly illegal and just not cool, because if they had found out pictures were being taken, we would have been kicked off the deck. And he did this. He took the my little instant camera, and I'll show you some of these in a little bit. And he sat there and took picture after picture of the Stones on their last show. And I'll show you that in a little bit. The other funny part of this is he was drinking during the show, which is another thing you're not supposed to be doing, Dr. Pepper and brandy, which is disgusting just to think about it. But he was cool enough to share. So he's sharing his drinks. We're in this platform for all these shows, and he's taking all these pictures of the Stones. So, again, I'm doing this in a low budget, low tech kind of way, but I want to show multiple pictures at once. So there's the Stones. Again, these pictures, considering they were done with an instant camera, are pretty decent. You know, granted, some of them are darker than others. But considering this is not pro shot, and I'm like, you know, those little disposable cameras, no flash, because obviously if there had been a flash, we would have been kicked off the show. And I'm grooving to the Stones, listening to my favorite band. Then here's the end of the show when everybody's downstage. And there's funny, here's the picture. Do you see this little dot? That's the other spot operator. So you can see how high I am. I remember, see, there's the top of these people's heads. That's how small, that's how close we were to the stage and above these guys. And then these aren't so great. These are when Mick was on his platform. But again, I'm a massive Stones fan. I'm lucky enough to be at this show. And this guy sharing his drinks, taking pictures for me, my favorite band. There I am, running a spotlight in quotation marks, able to see this band up close and personal. I'll show you it again. Here they are. And as I dropped them on the ground, I talked to you about guitar picks at Stevie Ray Vaughan. Well, somehow or another, I ended up with guitar picks from the Stone shows that says Woody's Pecker, which is pretty funny, or Woody's Peckers. Got two of those. You can probably figure out that's Ronnie Wood. And then I got two from Keith Richards, Crushed Pearl. Never really figured out what the story is behind these, but there they are. So easily one of my favorite musical experiences ever, working as a stagehand, being on deck for those three shows, being able to see the band as close as I did like this, playing all the great songs. And the set list, and as I wind up here, was Start Me Up, Bitch, Sad, 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 and Under Cover of the Night, Harlem Shuffle, Tumbling Dice, Miss You, Ruby Tuesday, Play with Fire, Dead Flowers, One Hit to the Body, Mixed Emotions, Honky Tonk Women, Rockin' a Hard Place, Midnight Rambler, Can't always get what you want. Little Red Rooster, Before They Make Me Run, Happy, Paint It Black, 2000 Light Years. I mean, it was like a greatest hits. Sympathy for the Devil, Gimme Shelter, It's Only Rock and Roll, Brown Sugar, The Satisfaction, and then Jumpin' Jack Flash. So again, Michael, Clash City Rocker, trying to engage the VC with a conversation about music. Again, I'm a collector. I'm passionate about music. I've been lucky enough to see some great shows, and I wanted to have an opportunity to share some of my experiences with you. Okay, peace.